Tired of dealing with annoying flies, fruit flies, and gnats in your home? The Zevo Flying Insect Trap is your ultimate solution. Don't wait. Check out the link in the video description now to get your Zevo Flying Insect Trap on Amazon and enjoy a bug-free home today.
The solitary Allied B-17 bomber was an easy target. Down to one working engine and riddled with flak and bullets, the aircraft would struggle to stay in the air over Germany, let alone cover the 300 miles back to England. Cannon fire had blasted away the aircraft's nose cone, causing a 200 miles per hour wind to howl through the open fuselage of the plane. The tail gunner's lifeless body hung from his shattered turret, his blood frozen in icicles over the machine guns, and all but one of the crew in the rear were incapacitated by wounds or exposure to the frigid air. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse for the plane's 21-year-old pilot Charlie Brown, he noticed a Nazi fighter plane readying himself to deal the final, lethal blow to his crippled aircraft. But what happened next is an extraordinary story of chivalry and mercy from World War II, providing a glimmer of humanitarian light amid the dark tragedy of the conflict. The German pilot chose to spare his enemy by escorting the damaged plane to the safety of the English Channel. Then, against all odds, a half-century later, the two men became friends and remained close until their deaths less than 6 months apart. It was 5 days before Christmas in 1943 when Charlie Brown, a 21-year-old B-17 pilot from West Virginia, took off on a cold, overcast winter day in Britain for his first combat mission over Germany. The operation had practically been a suicide mission from the start, as Brown's unit faced heavy fire from 250 anti-aircraft guns and shelling from 15 German fighter jets during the daylight bombing run of a Nazi munitions factory in Bremen. Due to mechanical failures and damage to other aircraft, Brown's plane, Ye Old Pub, had to move ahead in formation, making it a prime target for enemy counterattacks. Before Brown had a chance to drop his payload, the plane was attacked by German anti-aircraft guns. Cannon fire shattered the plane's nose cone, damaging the oxygen and electrical systems, and wiping out 3 of the 4 engines. The tail gunner was killed and all, but one of the crew in the rear was incapacitated. Oxygen-starved himself, Brown had been knocked out and regained consciousness, just in time to level out his plane from a death spiral less than 1,000 feet from the ground. By then, the German fighters had vanished. They likely observed the crippled plane belching smoke and flames, sputtering along at 135 miles per hour, barely above its stalling speed, and marked it as another kill before returning to base. After inspecting the blood-spattered interior of the plane, the flight engineer reported, "We're chewed to pieces, the hydraulics are bleeding, the left stabilizer is all but gone, and there are holes in the fuselage big enough to climb through." Clinging to the last vestiges of hope, Brown realized his only option was to try and make the 300-mile journey back to England. But he faced an even graver concern when he glanced out his cockpit and noticed his worst nightmare, a gray German Messerschmitt fighter hovering just 3 feet off their wingtip. In the cockpit of the German fighter, his guns primed, was Lieutenant Franz Stigler, a Luftwaffe ace with 29 kills under his belt. With his leather-gloved hand on the trigger, he was just 1 kill away from achieving the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest award for valor. Stigler, aged 28 at the time, was a veteran airman who had been flying since the start of the war. He on the ground refueling and reloading his guns when the lone B-17 had lumbered slowly overhead. Within minutes, Stigler was up in the air to give chase, but as he drew closer, he noticed the rear gunner's lifeless body hanging from his shattered turret. Another gunner was unconscious, his fleece collar soaked in red blood. He saw the rest of the terrified 10-man crew, battered and wounded, desperately tending to one another's injuries. As Stigler pulled alongside the plane, he was shocked that he could see clean through the middle, where the fuselage had been bombarded by artillery. The tail and the rudder had also been shot off with giant holes on the wings. "It was the most heavily damaged aircraft I ever saw that was still flying," he recalled years later. In that moment, he remembered the words of an old commanding officer. "Honor is everything here," he had told a young Stigler before his first mission. "If I ever see or hear of you shooting,